Hong Kong is a very beautiful place too, and it's a very good government system here. We are from Nepal, which we really like it.
Hong Kong, holding the title as one of the most densely populated areas in the world, has a population of over 7 million people, with 94% of that being ethnic Chinese, while the remaining 6% having foreign ties. It is obvious that these foreigners have immigrated to Hong Kong from foreign countries, such as Britain and the United States. It is oblivious to many that a majority of these Chinese people trace their ancestry to various parts of China. The series of changes Hong Kong has undergone in the past 150 years, whether it may be financial or political, is down to the movement of people in and out of the territory. It is immigration that led to the success of Hong Kong. After the First Opium War and the occupation of Hong Kong by the British forces in 1841, the population of Hong Kong increased massively from an original 7,500 local tanka fishermen to 1.6 million just before the Japanese invasion of Hong Kong during the Second World War. The population fell back down to approximately 500,000 citizens after the war, and eventually grew to the current 7 million in 2010. During this 150-year time frame, there were several points of sudden and massive increases in the number of immigrants into Hong Kong. Due to the Chinese Civil War, people left China because of the political uncertainty of the country and went to Hong Kong. Hundreds of thousands of people came, and soon the population rose over 2 million. Most of these people came from the neighboring Cantonese-speaking Guangdong. The most recent wave of immigration, 1981, led to the population increase by almost 2 million. The majority of these were illegal immigrants from mainland China. Since the handover in 1997, 780,000 mainlanders have settled in Hong Kong, making up a tenth of the current population, with almost 40% of those since 2006. After the PRC assumed sovereignty of the territory in 1997, Hong Kong's immigration system remained largely unchanged from its British predecessor model. Residents from the mainland China do not have the right of abode in Hong Kong, nor can they enter the territory freely, both before and after 1997. The Immigration Department currently manages not only immigration control, but also identity, births, deaths, and marriages. The 2011 Population Index of Hong Kong shows over 300,000 people have based themselves in Hong Kong in the last 10 years from a foreign country. The influx of immigrants from mainland China, approximately 45,000 per annum, with a daily quota of 150 immigrants. These people are granted a one-way permit, allowing them to permanently reside in Hong Kong. This scheme was proposed to prevent large volumes of people coming to Hong Kong and preventing illegal immigration. The vast majority of these people use the land checkpoints of Lu Wu and Shenzhen Bay to enter the territory. Hong Kong International Airport is the secondary entrance point. We asked Mr. Lee, a government official, about his views on immigration.
新嘅移民咧，由中國嚟到香港，咁佢哋一定係好難適應嘅。香港個節奏咧就好唔同嘅。佢哋做，因為全世界咧嗰個節奏最快就係香港，咁佢哋要適應個環境咧，一定要學翻香港本身嗰啲人嗰個節奏先得㗎。如果唔係，根本冇辦法適應到香港嘅生活。點解嗰啲人要嚟香港咧？咁都係一定係佢本身喺佢原有嘅 origin 嘅地方，佢生活得唔好，佢先要離開佢本身嘅 origin 甚至香港。咁佢都係想個 improve 個 life，improve 個 living standard。同埋佢都係想賺多啲錢，佢一定係因為如果係假設佢 if they from China，the China living standard is very low， compared with Hong Kong. Even the salaries, you know, just like a Filipino, you know, is from the original country. The salary is very, very low.
Hong Kong is an international city with over 7 million residents spread across 1,104 km squared area. In a small city, there are over 1,100 schools in Hong Kong, 2 different systems for international students and local school students. In the 2 schools, the teaching style and exam system is different, local schools being DSE, international schools being IB. Many people debate on which school is harder, which school yields better results, and which is more relaxed. In this documentary, we will be comparing the 2 systems and be looking into an international school and a local school. Island School is an international school run by the ESF, the English Schools Foundation. It was built in 1967 and holds approximately 1,200 students and approximately 100 staff. Queen's College is an all-boys school supported by the government and built in 1862. It holds approximately 1,200 students and approximately 60 staff.
其實 DSE 咧就係喺中六嘅時候完咗之後考嘅，但係我哋考試之前咧就要準備唔同科嘅校本評核，即係我哋嘅 School Space Assessments 啦。咁咧呢啲同埋通識科嘅 IES 啦。咁但係呢啲咧雖然佔分比較少，同埋佢係佔成個 DSE 考試嘅好少分，但係佢就會花咗我哋同好多大量嘅時間同精力去考。咁通常 DSE 咧就係會喺3月份開始考啦，但係我哋準備一啲各式各樣嘅 project 咧係要12月先完成嘅。咁最重要，我覺得應該係學業嘅。咁考試應該係學生裏邊最重要嘅一環啦。咁因為我哋呢樣嘢關乎起我哋嘅升學嘅問題嘅。咁另外通常放學之後咧就會1至5就翻去温書啦。咁大部分時間都係温書同做功課啦。咁另外一啲時間就可能放 break 啊，休息咁樣啦。咁至於喺社交生活同埋學習生活裏邊取得平衡咧，咁我會通常喺放自己休息嘅時候咧，咁就會去同人 message 啊，或者係同人去電聯等等啦，咁就係咁啦。但係如果我有機會嘅話咧，咁我都幾想喺國際學校讀書，因為可以考 IB 唔係考 DSE 啦，因為 DSE 真係好忙好辛苦啦。
If I had to choose, I would choose international schools because international schools are much more relaxed, even though the DSE schools are probably better for future. Well, I do take fencing and I used to take robotics. And what this means is that you can look into your own favorite sports and not just the typical everyday sports that you learn from PE. As well as robotics, it's a really, really interesting way to learn about technology. That means that you can program and play around with things that you've never really played around before. Hearing from local school students, the clubs that you have to join like this, you have to make yourself.
喺本地學校咧，就一般咧就係紀律性比較強啲嘅。由於功課多啦，咁所以學生咧參與呢個課餘活動咧嘅時間唔會太多，除非佢哋自己本身係應付功課能力比較強啲咯。而喺呢個國際學校咧，就相對咧佢哋參與課餘活動嘅時間係多啲嘅。形式亦都好多啦，各式其式，學生係可以揀選佢有興趣嘅課餘活動。
考試咧就 local school 咧就比較注重係 即係香港嗰個嘅 DSE 啦，係啦嚇，咁即係公開考試啦。咁但係 ESF 嘅學校咧就即係佢應該係主理咧，就除咗香港嘅考試之外咧，咁佢有好多其他嘅選擇啦。咁即係特別係即係等佢銜接去到國外咯。功課份量咧，其實就一般嚟講咧，就唔可以用個量嚟到去分別咯，反而咧係個性質咯。咁大部分local school 嘅功課咧，都係可能係比較一個鞏固式、操練式咯。咁但係 ESF 好多嘅功課咧，咁可能就係一個比較開展式，即係以可能係一啲 project 為主咯。
Ultimately, we can say that both students prefer studying in an international school, both using the reason of it being comparably more relaxing in terms of workload and school life. The parent and the teacher also have similar comments on the two education systems. They think that the pressure given out by a local school can push the students to their limits and thereby securing the futures. At the same time, they believe that an international school can provide more space for students, allowing them to develop their own passion and thereby be all-rounded teenagers.
We have got an incredibly rich biodiversity here in Hong Kong. Something like Professor Morton measured this over the years he was here working in Hong Kong U, and he was saying there's something like 12 times the biodiversity in Hong Kong sea waters as the equivalent area in, say, the UK. So we're very, very lucky for that.
Has the water pollution in Hong Kong been declining over the past few years in Lama?
Well, Ferdy, that's a great question. I live on Lamma Island and I've seen a large increase in the amount of water pollution. That's both in the amount of oil that we have in the water, but mainly in the amount of plastic that we have. I've lived in Lamma Island for 6 years now, and I've noticed that in that 6-year period there's a lot more plastic.
For many years, Hong Kong has been incredibly overfished, and by trawling nets. So trawlers basically are weighted nets rolling along on big sort of balls along the bottom, dragging a net through the bottom, trying to catch whatever fish are down there, but also like prawns and that kind of thing. So regularly all of our seabeds are stirred up, and that produces a huge amount of mud in the water. So I actually was diving off Jin Island about 2 years ago, and as we were getting ready to dive, a trawler came past about 100 meters away from us, and then when we dived, we just dived into a mud plume, and it took about 10 minutes of swimming to get out of that mud plume. So basically the trawler had just, obviously scooped up tons of mud, but then that mud doesn't just fall back on the seabed where it came from. It goes into the shallower waters as well, and it'll be dumped on top of corals and smother the corals. So you're putting a lot of stress on the corals. Our corals live generally in the shallow areas, sort of 6 to 10 meters. There's a lot of hard corals. And if they're repeatedly getting stressed out by more mud, and more mud falling on them, they're having to use energy to keep themselves clean. And that's putting a lot of stress on them.
the luxury of pretty good conditions most of the time. The air is clean, and mostly the water is pretty clean, better than most of Hong Kong. But I would say that sometimes when the trash comes in off the ocean and builds up on the beaches, it's pretty annoying. We have groups, we organize groups, and we get down and clean up all the trash and bag it up periodically after storms. But I think a lot of the problem comes from the fishing boats that just dump their trash at sea.
What do you think will happen to this declining water problem, pollution in Hong Kong if nothing's been done to it?
Yeah, do you know what? I'd like to be optimistic about that, Ferdy, but I think really, unless there is drastic action on the part of Hong Kong government and the Chinese government, things are just going to get worse. And it comes back to your point earlier where you talked about activism and working with your community. That's also pressuring our local government and our local political leaders on actually ensuring action does go place. Personally, before it gets better, I think it's going to get worse.
Sophia Ward, and I'm a scientist at Fordham University.
This is the Arctic. The Arctic is a polar region that is located at the northmost part of the Earth. The Arctic consists of the Arctic Ocean and certain parts of Canada, Russia, the United States, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Iceland. It is surrounded by vast ice-covered ocean and treeless permafrost. The region of the Arctic is usually defined as the Arctic Circle. This means it is the approximate inlet of the midnight sun and the polar night. The average temperature in the Arctic for the warmest month in July is below 10 degrees Celsius. Most of the regions in the Arctic are subarctic.
The Arctic is an ecosystem that relies fully on the existence of sea ice. Animals depend on four main principles to survive. These include the right temperature, fresh water, food, and places to raise their young in. Animals in the Arctic are affected by global warming because the changing climate is altering their key habitat elements that are essential to wildlife survival. Walrus are having a hard time finding food, as well as finding space for them to rest and breed on. They also rely on the ice to haul themselves out. Walrus pups are drowning at sea, and others are crushed to death during stampedes on beaches that are crowded with older walrus. The hotter waters of the Arctic oceans will cause populations of trout, salmon, and other marine species to die out, as they require cold water to survive. This increase of temperature has altered food availability, as it has made it more scarce and hard to come by. Migratory birds normally arrive at their destination, the Arctic, to search for their food sources such as insects, seeds, and flowering plants. However, global warming has made it harder for these birds to find food. The main threat to polar bears is the loss of sea ice in which they live on. Polar bears are starving during the long summer months as the ice they rely heavily on to hunt for has melted. This is a quote. According to Professor of Biological Sciences, Andrew DeRocher, polar bears can go for longer without food, but when you start to push them off the edges, it reduces the reproductive rate and females give birth to smaller cubs, and small cubs don't survive as well as big, healthy cubs. He also stated that the sea ice in Hudson Bay, Manitoba, is breaking up about 3 weeks earlier than it used to. The Inupiaq people of Barrow, Alaska, are highly affected by the global warming changes on the ecosystem. And they depend heavily on the subsistence of whale hunting for nutritional and economic needs. Whales like cold waters, and they find it easier to breed in. Even though they are cold-blooded, they can benefit from some of the effects of global warming, since they can experience more sunlight and heat. However, the waters are warming up and they are forced to migrate north to find colder water. Their migratory trends are affected by the extent of sea ice and will therefore be changed. These types of whales that include humpback, sperm, narwhal, beluga, and gray white whales will die out. This leads to creatures such as leopard seals and the killer whales to also die out, as the previous species of Arctic whales are their food. The habitat of these Arctic whales will be increasingly vulnerable to industrial development, which may harm and threaten these amazing creatures. The non-existence of these whales will have a major effect on the Inupiaq people living in Alaska, as it now won't have a growing business, which has been a nutritional sport for many years. Since the ice is melting in the Arctic as well as in Antarctica, the sea levels are rising and affecting a number of places around the globe. One place that is beginning to feel dramatic changes is Hong Kong. In 1990 and 1999, there was a rapid rise of sea level and an immediate decline soon after. There have also been many tide gauge records at other coastal stations in the region. According to the Hong Kong IPCC case study, on average, the mean sea level in the Victoria Harbour has risen at a rate of 2.6 millimeters per year during the period between 1954 and 2010. This case study also found out that in 2007, the global sea rise rose at an average of 1.8 millimeters per year between the years of 1961 and 2003. The Hong Kong Observatory observed and found out that the level of the Victoria Harbour in Hong Kong rose at an average of 2.33 millimeters per year since the 60s. The way that these animals are suffering from the changes in the environment due to global warming is horrendous, and I believe the governments aren't doing enough to stop this and how we are polluting the earth. I believe that these special species from the Arctic should definitely be saved, and it is something that we have to take into account. There are many things in which we can do to help save the polar bears, Arctic foxes, walrus, emperor penguins, seals, and whales. One way is to work with the governments, industries, and individuals to reduce car emissions, as well as carbon dioxide that is being released from smokestacks. We also need to ensure that these polar bears aren't being harmed in any way by following polar bear trackers, as well as preventing disruptive activities to their habitats, such as hunting, poaching, industrial impacts, and unsustainable tourism. These are just a few of the things that we can do to help save the animals in the Arctic, but it is all up to us to start taking action before time runs out.
Global warming and climate change is the increase in average global temperatures in the Earth's atmosphere and oceans. It is argued that natural events and human activities are contributing to this issue. It is caused primarily by increases in greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide. Since 2004, over 8 billion tons of carbon dioxide was pumped out per year. Natural carbon sinks because the ocean absorbs some of this, while the rest is accumulated in the atmosphere. If this issue is not solved in time, there will be serious consequences. Low-lying coastal regions with dense population are especially vulnerable to climate shifts, with the poorer countries and small island nations having the hardest time adapting. It has been estimated that by 2080, 13 to 88 million people around the world would lose their homes to floods. So how do we go about solving this issue? Is it enough for individuals to change certain habits? What if not everyone wants to cooperate and try to stop global warming? Well, we will be discussing about how the government's actions will help lessen the effect of global warming. Welcome to today's environmental report. We are going to be looking at government contributions to improving global warming. Let's have a look at the rank of the top most environmental countries listed by the Environmental Performance Index. In the top 3 of the EPI ranks of 2014, Switzerland comes first, followed by Luxembourg and finally Australia. The scores are close, ranging from 87.67 to only 82.40. The majority of the top 10 countries are in Europe, with the United Kingdom coming in 12th. The United States of America is ranked 33rd, with a score of 67.52. At a local comparison, China comes in at 118th. The last ranking countries are Haiti, Mali, and Somalia. Today we have representatives from 3 different countries, Sweden, USA, and China. They are here to discuss about current actions that their governments are taking to help improve global warming. Hi, welcome to the Global Warming Update News. Today I will be asking you some questions related to how your country's governments are taking part in solving the issues of climate change. So, what are some current actions that your country's governments are taking to help lessen the effect of global warming? Should we start with Sweden? Well, Sweden was an early adopter of sustainable thinking. As early as around 1960s, we already recognized that the rapid loss of natural resources had to be dealt with sooner or later. So we took the lead in organizing the very first UN conference on the environment, which was held in Stockholm in 1972. Since then, we have also continued to work actively with environmental issues both nationally and internationally. What about the United States of America? What is your government doing? Well, actually, the main sector of the United States government that has taken the most action on tackling climate change is the executive branch of the government. President Obama has set projects working on reducing air pollution, protecting the oceans, supporting sustainable communities. He has also doubled the renewable energy generation, promoting the use of solar and wind energy, and much more. Oh, speaking of protecting the oceans, Sweden's proactive environmental policies have also led to a reduction in acidification in bodies of water. Actually, since 1990, the proportion of acidified lakes has also been reduced from 17 to 10%. At present, Sweden has the highest percentage of renewable energy in the European Union. By 2020, at least half of the country's energy should be renewable, a target that the government believes is within reach. So has the Hong Kong government worked with China concerning global warming issues?
Yeah, actually, Hong Kong and Guangdong officials have been working together to tackle cross-boundary issues, environmental issues since 1990. We have also taken action in trying to reduce emissions, like when the Environmental Protection Department introduced a comprehensive program to reduce vehicle emissions. This has actually proven to lessen the effect of global warming, as the roadside concentrations of the major air pollutant emissions from vehicles has been reduced, and the statistics shows that the number of smoky vehicles has actually dropped by nearly 80% since 2000. Also, another example of our actions on improving this issue is when we implemented the levy scheme in July 2009. Under the levy scheme, the registered retailers are actually no longer allowed to provide free plastic bags, shopping bags, and they actually must charge customers an environmental levy for each plastic shopping bag when they ask for it. So actually this has reduced the amount of plastic we have used, as well as promoting a greener lifestyle for Hong Kong citizens. In terms of China, there was an annual general meeting held on November 15th, 2013 for the environment and development, and it was held in Beijing to discuss a range of research reports and recommendations on policy issues. And their main goal was to discuss about the environmental protection and social development in China, and they wanted to promote an ecological civilization. So what are some future goals, aims, or scenarios that your government is hoping to achieve in the near future? Also, can you explain a little bit about how your government's going to make these goals, actually practical? With its overall goal for 2020, Sweden's environmental policy is based on 16 environmental quality objectives, which are in this portfolio. You can have a look. Sanctioned by the government and the parliament. Some of these objectives include reduced climate impact, cleaner air quality, natural acidification of the oceans, a non-toxic and safe radiation environment, a protective ozone layer, flourishing lakes and streams, balanced marine environment, which is very important, and sustainable forests. And obviously there are more, but these are just a few of the objectives. Well, in partnership with industry leaders, the administration will develop fuel economy standards for heavy-duty vehicles to further reduce the fuel consumption through the application of advanced cost-effective technology like hybrid vehicles. The administration will also support the renewable fuel standard and invest in research and development to help bring next-generation biofuels online. We're thinking also about the future scenarios. So when it comes to the oil and gas sector, investments to build and upgrade gas pipelines will not only put more Americans to work and have more Americans be employed, but also reduce emissions and enhance economic productivity. So this will, benefit the economy and the environment at the same time. The Obama administration will work collaboratively with state governments as well as the private sector to reduce emissions across multiple sectors and improve air quality, as well as achieving public health and economic benefits. Hong Kong's main issue is that we waste a lot of resources, so our main target is to cut down mainly the amount of food waste that goes to landfills by at least 40% by 2020. So we're planning to do this over a course of about 8 years. And although this is an ambitious goal, it can only be achieved with public support and active participation of individuals in Hong Kong. So the prevention and reduction of food waste to landfills has multiple direct and indirect benefits. So it will help to reduce various resource use associated with food production, cut greenhouse gas emissions, recover useful resources from food waste, reduce the social cost of handling and treating food waste, and better utilization of the capacity of landfill space. So our strategy to achieving this objective is through, first of all, preventing the wastage of food resources. We can also donate surplus food or extra food to people who are in need. We can also recycle and turn food waste into renewable energy. So this is the end of our interview for today. Thank you for joining Global Warming Update. Back to the studio.
Hong Kong, the gateway to Asia. Over 70 of the world's 100 largest banks have established operations within the territory. Skilled foreign professionals rank Hong Kong as the most attractive place to live in Asia, with prime living standards and quality of life. Yet today, we are exploring the other side of the story of the 2.1 million people that live in public rental housing. After World War II, a combination of people returning to the city and immigrants to Hong Kong resulted in sprawling squatters constructed at the foot of hills in Kowloon, usually made of scrap wood. On the night of Christmas Day in 1953, a fire tore through the Shek Kip Mei area of squatter huts, leaving more than 58,000 people homeless. The first public housing units were built in the place of the Shek Kip Mei shantytowns in 1953. These were utilitarian housing blocks with an H design, allowing for 2 residential wings, while sanitary features and the utilities were located in the connecting part. As Hong Kong's first public housing estate, the colonial government didn't perfect it. It was not that sanitary, as well as being very cramped and poorly ventilated. Nonetheless, the Shek Kip Mei estate became the birthplace of various Hong Kong success stories. One of the most notable to come from the estates is John Woo, a Hollywood director of many well-known movies such as Mission Impossible 2. The first public housing block was the Mayhaw House, which has since been turned into a youth hostel. A small exhibition still remains as a reminder to everyone about the heritage of Mayhaw House and how it was instrumental in bringing around a new wave of public housing in Hong Kong. One of the most significant public housing estates in Hong Kong's history is the famous Wah Fu Estate. At the core of Wah Fu's design is its location. When it was first built in 1967, Wah Fu Tsuen was located far away from urban areas, which called for a city-town design allowing the minimization of commuting. It was the first public housing estate to feature everything, including restaurants, markets, a library, and sporting facilities. Housing estates far from urban areas also adopted this convenient city-town design. The design was also adapted to a certain extent in urban areas, just to provide low-cost and convenient supplies to public housing tenants. Being one of Hong Kong's oldest public housing estates, the population of Wah Fu Tsuen has dwindled from about 50,000 to 28,000 in 2011. However, this exposes one of Wah Fu Tsuen's oldest problems, which is one person having more than one flat. While there should be more than 22,000 vacant units in Wah Fu, the reality is that most of these units are still occupied by nobody. Most tenants have moved out but still kept the unit for either personal reasons or just for the nice view and location.
第一個問題，你喺華富邨住咗幾耐呢？係。咁你覺得華富邨整體個環境點樣？咁你希望華富邨將來係點樣？
多啲商場，單位都多啲。
你喺華富邨住咗幾耐
11年左右，10年咗啦。
邨將來重建之後，有啲咩設施啊，或者
多啲足球場打球場。
我哋中意踢波。
多啲科技先進啲咯。
即係有。
Another, perhaps even more devastating problem that affects the whole of Hong Kong is the shortage of public housing. While government reports claim that there is on average a 2.7-year wait for public housing units after application, an Oxfam report finds that it is much higher. Over 3/4 of those who have applied for public housing more than 4 years ago have yet to be allocated units. Many lawmakers are also angry at the fact that some people can wait for more than 7 years without getting close to living in public housing, and it is still a hot debate in Legco. And what does the housing department have to say about this? We interviewed a design manager responsible for overseeing public housing projects for the housing department.
The government's public housing plan has us aim to build more public housing in the coming years. Actually, in the coming decade, we plan to build 470,000 public housing units, which is 60 to 70% more than the previous decade. The public wants us to produce more public housing because there's a serious shortage in Hong Kong. The government has a special department which investigates land use. It is sometimes hard for the government to secure land for public housing. When plots of land are given to the private sector, they can put it on the market to make millions, while public housing cannot.
Student activism has recently been all over the Hong Kong news. But how big is the impact of these protests? Have there been other similar incidents in the world? we look into the more recent events of student activism that have taken place in various countries, and whether they were as effective as they were intended to be. Join us today as we look to answer the unanswered question. What is student activism? Student activism is work done by students to cause either political, social, economic, or environmental change. Despite being often focused on schools, educational funding, or curriculum, student groups have influenced political events.
Student protesters here are out on the streets. They're angry.
Around the world, student activism has created catastrophe. An obvious example is the Tiananmen Square massacre, where students fought for democracy, only to result in thousands of students' deaths and several more arrested. Students sat outside Tiananmen Square waiting for change, only to be greeted by terrifying army tanks. Another example is more recent, where students from different states in America performed a walkout at their school for sexist dress codes, after one female student was escorted out of her prom, told that her dress was too showing. The students then started a walkout from the school to protest, which then led to the #IamMoreThanADistraction campaign, which spread across the entire country. As you may also know, student activism has recently become the center of attention in Hong Kong, due to the Occupy Central campaign. During this demonstration, thousands of students camped out on main roads near government buildings to protest against the change that China was trying to make to Hong Kong. Even students as young as 12 protested. While some may say they are passionate for the city, we believe people can find it a nuisance.
It has undoubtedly caused a lot of trouble and chaos in the city.
It was a good thing that they're active in politics, but I think they should allow both sides to interact.
I think that it's a good thing that people of our age, even like young people from early secondary school, is already starting to be aware of what's happening in society and actively take part in it. Because I think in the past it used to be like adults work and like no one really participated when they were studying. But now that a lot of people pay attention to it and involved in it.
It is, well, they've done quite a lot, I think.
To be honest, I agree with the motive. Like, it's a good thing that they're actually participating. However, at times the methods they use in expressing their opinion might not be the best.
We have found that many people agree with the idea of protesting, saying that it is good that they are taking action, but may disagree with the methods, finding them too violent or too inconvenient for them in several different ways. This leads us to think, what are the good and convenient ways of fighting for what's right? Is public disturbance really necessary for the cause you are fighting for? But overall, student activism has created good change, and we're taking place due to the right causes of action, and through this have been able to affect the community in different ways. Although the outcome of protesting is still very unpredictable and may lead to chaos, including multiple deaths and arrests, we believe that it is an important thing to be passionate about change and being able to do it. And us, as students, have the power to do that.
From a Global Perspectives project and will be focused on the unit of law and criminality. Now, I've chosen to make a question that is, would crime be more efficiently prevented if our world consisted of a single government with a universal set of laws? The closest we have at the moment to a world government would be the United Nations, otherwise abbreviated normally as the UN simply. The definition of a world government is the idea of a single political authority to govern all of humanity. Now, the UN was founded in 1945 after World War II and was limited to an adversary role, and its purpose is stated to foster cooperation between national governments rather than exert authority over them. In the world today, a large part, including the European Union, are part of what is called supranational unions. Now, these are quite close to a world government, but not quite. It is a type of multinational organization which includes negotiated power being delegated to an authority by governments of member states. A publicly accepted political ideology would also be needed, which is focused on organization of society and what is the most appropriate way to achieve this goal. The same laws for all places, including criminal laws, will also be needed in a world government. Now, what are the number of criminals actually imprisoned? Out of 7.125 billion people in this world, only 9.2 million criminals are imprisoned, and this is all out of Earth. Criminals that are currently imprisoned is actually quite a small amount. In international crime-wise, there's no actual generally accepted definition, and it needs some solidified laws. What is the point? It's focused on the prevention of crime and to keep the general public safe, and these are focused on retribution methods, deterrence methods, incapitation methods, rehabilitation methods, and restoration. Well, the first one would be on people smuggling, and the definition is as stated above. And in the past few decades, we have seen a massive increase in people smuggling. And this makes up for a large portion of illegal smuggling and is done with the consent of the customer himself or herself. And this problem, as set in the world government, we first need to see the generalization of this problem. They are looking for a better life from where they were before. So therefore, it wouldn't really change much as they have their own reasons to immigrate illegally. The same laws and the same minimum wages all over the planet, so therefore their perspective remains unchanged. We should look at drugs and the drug cannabis, also known as marijuana. It is used for medical and recreational usage and is legal in different countries. Medical ones would be in California, Illinois, and Michigan, whilst recreation is for Portugal, the Netherlands, and Colombia. This problem set in the world government is mainly the smuggling of the drug and the illegal consumption of it. This points to how marijuana was legalized in a few states. The crime rates were analyzed and there was a significant drop. These consumers tend to have less violent behavior, and the increase in criminality is due to its illegality. In a world government scenario, we could legalize it, but why were these made illegal in the first place? It was actually due to racial issues. When Chinese immigrants went to the US started taking jobs, opium was associated with the Chinese, quite racist. And the first marijuana, first cocaine laws were also based on racist issues. A good scenario for world government, we should let people make some judgment for themselves, as alcohol and tobacco are actually much more deadly. Legalizing this would free up a lot of room in prisons. Control is also a lot easier and is one less crime for police to spend manpower on. So a lot of choices would be made in a world government, and we really have to make the correct choices for us to make the best use of human society together. In a world government, it really has the potential to reduce crime, but the laws have to be strategically made. Of course, it's very hard to achieve world unity, but there's a lot of potential when we reach that goal, and we should really aim for this goal so we can have a better future. Thank you for watching my presentation, and here are my sources.
Created using Powtoon.
Child abandonment is an emotional and physical journey for the parent and the child. Throughout China, this is a common route for the parents to take, due to the reasons that will be explored in our documentary. China is a country where child abandonment occurs quite regularly. Choosing to abandon your child is heartbreaking for many parents, however some have no other choice. They hope that their child will be taken in by others with a high quality of life. Child abandonment refers to when a parent willfully chooses to withhold physical, emotional, and financial help to a child under the age of 12, according to Hong Kong law. It It applies when a child is left without the company of a guardian, either at home or any other location.
Parents with sick or disabled children may be unable to provide for the child. Babies that are sick or disabled are said to be a burden to the family, and that's why abandonment may occur.
In China, there are a lot of kids that are born with disabilities. Every year, about 900,000 children are born with a disability or some kind of birth defect. And because of that, families face a lot of pressure. It's not really culturally acceptable in China to have a child with a disability. And so disability becomes a big factor in abandonment. There's also not a lot of government support or services, so then typically what happens is that with the pressure and the lack of services and finance, families will abandon the child that has a disability.
Male children are of preference, and therefore if a female child is born, she is abandoned.
The reason why they wanted to have a boy is that when the boy grows up, he would look after the couple when they get older and be their pension, their social security.
It started 34 years ago with a country that had a dream to achieve. They put in a policy that would change their nation. This policy acts as a population control. Up until the 1960s, the Chinese government encouraged all families to have as many children as they pleased, in the hope to empower this growing country.
Mr. David, what is your understanding of the one-child policy?
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, that's a great question. The one-child policy was started back in the early 1970s by the Chinese government because there was just too many people, and they were really fearful about their ability to be able to feed and employ everybody.
Song Jian, a top Chinese official with the help of mathematicians, came up with the desired population of 700 million. To achieve this, the one-child policy was standardized across China on September 25th, 1980.
When the one-child policy came into use, the country got richer faster. Studies show that the only children may be more willing to work and are less likely to be self-employed. However, this leads to having less entrepreneurs in China.
ICC is an organization founded by David Gotts in 1993.
We will help you. We're going to support you so that you're not going to be on your own. And we can provide the services that they need, things like access to education for their child or for therapy or medical care. And that really, really helps families then to have a sense of hope.
The future of these children may seem strenuous. We simply cannot rely on adoption and to expect the government to remove the one-child policy.
ICC in and of itself can't be the solution to abandonment because the issue with abandonment is such a huge issue in China. There are just so many children in so many places that are being abandoned, particularly because they have disabilities. So ICC is just a part of the answer.
Some factors may possibly continue due to the poverty-stricken areas. However, one factor has slightly improved. In November 2013, China announced the decision to relax the one-child policy. The new policy stated that families may have 2 children if one parent is an only child. The abandonment has caused grief and turmoil within China. However, the factors, especially the one-child policy, has led to the population decreasing. It has caused an upset in the balance of China's society. Has China really improved this imbalance by relaxing the policy? And will these factors ever be fully erased?